Mom said, "Stay away from Christmas, you useless failure." So I did. The next day her heating bill failed, her internet cut out, and her car insurance lapsed. At 9:47 p.m. she texted, "Please fix this." I just smiled, because she had no idea what was coming next. When my mom said that to me on December 20th, I was sitting in my car outside their house with a trunk full of gifts. I hadn't even gotten out yet. The text came through while I was double-checking the tags. There was no hello, no explanation. Just that one line. I sat there for a solid minute staring at it. The snow had just started falling again. I watched it pile up on their porch steps like the world was trying to cover something ugly. I didn't reply. I didn't knock. I backed out of their driveway and drove 4 hours straight without stopping. I ended up at a cheap hotel just past the state line. Sat in the parking lot eating a cold sandwich from a gas station, still wearing the same sweater I'd put on that morning. Green, festive, with little embroidered lights my sister dared me to wear. I looked ridiculous, like someone who still believed in family. Let me back up. I'm Monica, 33, software consultant. I live in Austin, but I grew up in Missouri. My parents still live there in the same 2-bedroom house they had since I was a kid. My dad hasn't worked in years. Mom quit her job before the pandemic and never looked back. For the past 4 years I've been paying their utilities, their groceries, their phone bills. Every time they hit a snag I was the emergency fund. Always just a call away. And it wasn't out of guilt. Not really. It was out of duty. They made it clear growing up that love was transactional. I brought home good grades, they left me alone. I got a scholarship, they took credit. I got promoted, they expected gifts. When I bought my first house my mom cried, not because she was proud but because I hadn't picked one in their neighborhood. But the thing that kept me on the hook all these years wasn't them. It was my sister, Kayla. She's 28 now. Studying to be a physical therapist. Bright, self-aware, funny in this dry, sarcastic way that's probably the only reason I stayed sane through all of high school. She's the golden child to our parents. Can do no wrong. But unlike most golden children, she never used it against me. She knew they were wrong. She just kept her head down and tried to survive. And I tried to protect her any way I could. Paid for her textbooks. Co-signed her lease. She never asked, but she always thanked me. So yeah, this Christmas was supposed to be for her. She hadn't been home in a while either. We were both going to surprise them. I drove 14 hours with a trunk full of stuff. Winter clothes for everyone, a mini projector for movie nights, ingredients for her favorite peppermint cake. I even got Mom a necklace I'd seen in an antique store back in Austin. Real gold. I thought maybe, just maybe, this year would feel different. But instead I get that text. "Stay away from Christmas, you useless failure." I didn't even ask what triggered it. I didn't want to know. Maybe she was mad I hadn't sent money last week. Maybe she was jealous I was doing better than them. Or maybe she just wanted to hurt someone and I was the easiest target. Whatever the reason, it finally clicked in that moment. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as a walking, breathing ATM. The next day I called my bank. I removed my name from their account access. Stopped auto-paying their bills. Canceled their internet subscription. Froze the joint credit card I'd opened for emergencies. I didn't say a word to them. I didn't need to. Christmas Day, Kayla texted me around noon asking where I was. She was sitting in their living room. Alone. No decorations, no food. Apparently, Mom had thrown a fit the night before and said, "Christmas is canceled since Monica thinks she's too good for us." I didn't tell Kayla the truth. Not yet. I just said something came up. She sent back a sad face and said, "This place is so cold." Literally and emotionally. That was all I needed to hear. At 5:42 p.m., I got a notification from the electric company. Payment failed. Account overdue. At 7:13 I got an email from the car insurance company. Lapse due to non-payment. At 9:47 Mom texted me. "Please fix this." Just like that. No context. No apology. Not even a question mark. I looked at the message for a while. Then I turned off my phone and put it on the nightstand. I wasn't even angry anymore. Not yet. Something colder had settled in. Not sadness. Not grief. Something deeper. Because they had no idea what was coming next. I didn't turn my phone back on until December 26th. When I did, the screen lit up with chaos. 8 missed calls from Mom, 3 from Dad, and a row of texts that started off passive-aggressive and ended somewhere near hysterical. It began with "You need to grow up," moved to "After everything we did for you," and finished with "Don't expect a family when you're old and alone." It was predictable. Almost boring in its cruelty. I stared at the messages, then locked my phone and slid it face down on the nightstand. I didn't owe them a reply anymore. That afternoon I walked through the little downtown near my hotel. The streets were quiet except for the sound of boots crunching through salt and snow. I watched families coming out of coffee shops, laughing, holding bags of post-Christmas sales. Everyone looked normal. No one was burning bridges in parking lots or cutting off their parents over text. It made me wonder how many of those people had done what I'd just done, drawn a line that couldn't be uncrossed. By the time New Year's came around, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going back. Not to Missouri, not to that house, not to the role they'd built for me. The fixer, the wallet, the quiet daughter who kept everyone comfortable. I was done. It felt strange at first, like deleting part of my identity. For years, I'd measured my worth in invoices, in late payments, in small sighs of relief when they told me it went through. Every time I helped them, I thought I was saving the family. I didn't realize I was just prolonging its decay. And now it was finally crumbling. The heat in their house went out first, right after another storm hit. They called the electric company, but their account was already flagged as delinquent. A few days later, the internet was cut. Then the car was towed for unpaid insurance. I didn't even have to lift a finger. I'd simply stopped being their backup plan and their entire system fell apart on its own. Kayla texted me a few times that month. At first she thought Mom was just in one of her moods. Then she realized something was wrong. She said they'd been acting nervous, blaming each other for bills, snapping over every little thing. I told her everything. The text from Mom. The trunk full of gifts I never got to deliver. The hours I sat in their driveway thinking maybe I'd misread it, that it was a joke. I told her how I finally decided to cut the cords, all of them. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just said, "I believe you." 3 words. That was all. But they hit me harder than anything my parents had ever said. Because for once, someone in that family actually saw what had been happening. Around mid-January, Dad left me a voicemail. His tone was serious, but still full of that same pride that always made him impossible to talk to. He said things were difficult, and that maybe we should have a family conversation before things go too far. Then he mentioned the house. How they might lose it. How they needed a little help getting back on track. There it was again, the assumption. Like the world owed them softness. Like I hadn't already given them a lifetime of second chances. I didn't call back. Instead I called Kayla. We talked for 2 hours, long past midnight. She told me everything that had been happening since Christmas. How Mom blamed me for ruining the holiday. How Dad sat in the dark living room muttering that I'd turned my back on family. How they told Kayla not to end up cold and selfish like Monica. And the part that stuck with me most, Kayla said Mom was scared. Not angry. Scared. Because for the first time she realized I wasn't bluffing. That same night I made another call, to Aunt Lee. Mom's older sister. The quiet one who always stayed out of the drama, who'd slipped me $20 for gas the day I left for college because she knew no one else would. She answered on the first ring. I told her everything start to finish. She didn't interrupt. She didn't tell me to forgive them. She just listened the way no one in that family ever had. When I finished, she sighed and said quietly, "It's about time someone stood up to them." Then she told me something I didn't know, that my parents had been lying about their finances for years. They told the family I'd cut them off out of greed. They said I'd become one of those corporate types who thought she was too good for her own blood. And when Aunt Lee had asked for proof, Mom said I was mentally unstable. That was the moment something inside me turned to stone. I wasn't just done helping them. I was done protecting their image. The new year had barely started, but I already knew it was going to be the year everything changed, for me and for them. By February, it wasn't just the house falling apart. It was their story. Aunt Lee called me again one morning just after I'd wrapped a client meeting. She said Mom had been calling around to different relatives, trying to clear things up. Her version was that I'd gotten emotional, lashed out during a visit, and now was punishing them by withholding money. We didn't buy it. Neither did our cousin Jamie, who forwarded me a screenshot of a message Mom had sent saying, "We don't know what Monica's deal is lately. She's always been unpredictable." Unpredictable. That was the word they always used when I stopped doing what they expected. But they didn't know that this time I wasn't just setting a boundary. I was rebuilding my life without them in it. Their situation kept getting worse. Kayla said they were using space heaters in only 2 rooms now. The car was still out of commission. They'd borrowed one from a neighbor, but Mom managed to scrape a fender backing out of the driveway, and now they were facing a small claims issue over damages. Meanwhile, I was doing fine. Better than fine. I'd picked up 2 new clients since January. I started sleeping through the night. I even rejoined the gym. Not because I was trying to reinvent myself, but because I finally had the energy to care about something other than holding 2 other people's lives together. That shift in focus did something I didn't expect. It made me realize how deep the damage had gone. How I'd spent years chasing their approval like it was oxygen. Every promotion, every birthday gift, every wire transfer. All just bribes for basic kindness that never came. Kayla noticed the change too. We talked more than ever. She was quiet at first, hesitant to admit how bad things were getting. Then one night she told me the truth. Mom had started asking her for money. Not much. $20 here, a little for groceries there. But it was starting. And Kayla, already working part-time while juggling finals, didn't have the margin. She said no. And Mom lost it. Said she was turning out just like me. Told. Selfish. Ungrateful. Kayla hung up on her. Then she called me, crying not because she felt guilty, but because it confirmed everything. There was no bottom. No limit to how low they'd go if it meant staying comfortable. That was when I decided I was done being polite. I started telling the truth to everyone who asked. No more soft answers, no more vague explanations. When Uncle Martin called me out of nowhere and said he heard there was some family tension, I said they told me to stay away from Christmas and called me a failure. So I did. Everything since then is just them finally feeling the consequences. He didn't know what to say. Just mumbled something about hoping things worked out. But things were already working out, just not for them. It was around then that Aunt Lee stepped in harder. She stopped just being supportive and started getting vocal. She told Mom straight up that the way they treated me was disgusting. She told Dad he needed to take responsibility instead of hiding behind pride. And for once they couldn't spin it. Because Lee had been keeping receipts, screenshots, voicemails. They tried to guilt her too, but Lee wasn't having it. She told them this is what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. And that was when the calls started. First Dad. Then Mom. Then both. Voicemails. Messages. Little crumbs of something that sounded like regret but never quite made it to an actual apology. Things like, we've been thinking a lot about how things went down, or we never meant to hurt you, or the most insulting one, let's just move on from all this drama. Like it wasn't my life. Like they hadn't humiliated me, lied about me, used me, and then thrown me away when I stopped giving. Kayla wanted to believe they were trying. She said maybe they were starting to see the truth. That maybe after all this they'd finally change. I told her I didn't care if they changed. Because the damage was already done. And I wasn't interested in rebuilding something that never should have existed the way it did in the first place. By mid-February things had gone quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No more voicemails. No texts. Not even Aunt Lee had called in a few days. I figured maybe my parents were finally accepting it. The loss, the silence, the fact that I was done being their free ride. Then the letters started. They came in plain white envelopes, no return address, just my name, written in a messy, uneven scrawl I didn't recognize at first. The first one landed on a Wednesday. Inside was a 2-page letter, supposedly from my mother. It wasn't what I expected. No, I'm sorry, no ownership. Just a jumble of explanations, excuses, vague hints about how the holidays were emotionally complicated, how things were said in the heat of the moment, and how I had misunderstood the intent. Misunderstood the intent? The woman literally told me to stay away from Christmas because I was a failure. I didn't misunderstand anything. So I kept reading. Mostly because I couldn't believe the level of gaslighting. It wasn't just what she wrote, it was what she left out. There was no mention of Kayla, of what they'd put her through. No acknowledgement of the lies they told other family members. Just a soft, manipulative nudge toward forgiveness, as if I were the unreasonable one for having a boundary. 3 days later another letter came. Different handwriting. This one was from my dad. He didn't dance around it. His tone was cold, clipped. He said Mom hadn't been the same since Christmas. That she'd been sleeping more, forgetting things, skipping meals. He said, you've made your point, but your mother is not well. And I can't do this without you. And that line, it stuck. Because for the first time in weeks I hesitated. I called Kayla. She answered right away and I asked her straight, is Mom sick? She said maybe. She didn't know for sure. Mom had been off, that was true. Slower. Spaced out. She'd gone to the ER after nearly fainting but left before they ran tests. And then she'd started saying weird things like forgetting Kayla's class schedule, calling her by the wrong name. Sounded bad. And I hated that it made me feel something. Because after everything they'd done I still wasn't heartless. So I made a choice. Against my better judgment I got in my car and made the 12-hour drive back to Missouri. I didn't tell anyone. I just needed to see for myself. I pulled into the driveway late at night. The house looked dark, smaller somehow. There were trash bags on the porch and an old box fan tipped over in the snow. I knocked. No answer. I still had a key. I let myself in. The house was cold. Silent. The kind of quiet that feels unnatural. Then I heard footsteps. Mom came down the hall wrapped in a blanket. She stopped when she saw me. For a second I thought she'd cry. Or collapse. Or hug me. Instead she looked annoyed. She asked why I was there. I asked if she was okay. She blinked. Said she was fine. Asked again why I'd shown up unannounced. I said I got her letter. She stared at me confused. Said she didn't send a letter. I just stood there. Processing. I pulled out the envelope, showed it to her. She looked at it like it was a grocery list. Said she didn't write it. Didn't even know Dad had sent anything. And just like that, the last bit of doubt cracked. It wasn't her handwriting. It wasn't her voice. It was his. He'd written both letters. Faked her apology. Faked her concern. Used her illness, whatever it was, as bait to reel me back in. I didn't say anything else. I left. Drove 5 miles out of town, parked in a Walmart lot and sat there in the dark. It wasn't even rage anymore. It was something emptier. Like I just watched the last mask fall off. And the person underneath wasn't someone I knew. I called Kayla the next morning. Told her everything. She didn't even sound surprised. Just tired. She said she'd noticed things too. Small manipulations, things that didn't add up. Dad whispering one thing to her, another to Mom. That's when we realized something. He was playing us against each other. And had been for years. Later that day Aunt Lee called. Said she was coming to town. She'd heard enough. What none of us expected was what she'd uncover when she got there. And how fast everything was about to spiral out of control. Aunt Lee didn't warn anyone she was coming. She just showed up on a Saturday morning and walked right up to their door. Kayla was already there. She'd stopped by to drop off some groceries, trying to help in small ways without getting sucked into the vortex. When Lee knocked, Dad answered. According to Kayla, the look on his face dropped like a stone. He wasn't expecting her, and he definitely wasn't ready for what she brought with her. A folder. Just a plain manila folder, thick and worn. Inside were copies of bank statements, email printouts, text screenshots. Years of little things Lee had quietly gathered when she noticed patterns that didn't sit right. But she hadn't shown it to anyone. Not until now. She told him to sit down. She laid it all out on the table. Payments I'd sent that they claimed never arrived. Gifts they said I'd never bought. Money that disappeared. And then the part none of us saw coming. She had copies of checks my dad had written from my mom's account. To himself. Thousands of dollars. Kayla called me right after. Her voice was shaking, not from fear but disbelief. Turns out Mom had been acting strange, but it wasn't illness. It was confusion. She hadn't known about the money being moved around. He thought she was forgetful. Thought she was losing her mind. But it was him. He'd been manipulating her too. Quietly draining her account, changing passwords, intercepting mail. Making her dependent on him while telling the rest of the family she was sick and unstable. He even told Kayla at one point, "Don't trust your mom with your bank info, she's slipping." But she wasn't slipping. She was being handled. When Aunt Lee confronted him, he didn't deny it. He got up, went into the kitchen and slammed the door. Mom sat there in silence. For nearly half an hour. Kayla said she looked like someone waking up from anesthesia. She didn't say a word. And then, slowly she started asking questions. To Kayla. To Lee. She wanted to know everything. Who had been paying what? How long this had been happening. Why Monica, me, had really stopped showing up. And when Kayla told her, she cried. The first real tears Kayla said she'd ever seen from her. Not dramatic tears. Just quiet, steady sobbing like something inside her had cracked in half. A day later I got the call. It wasn't from Mom. Or Dad. It was from Lee. She said they were trying to make things right. That Mom wanted to speak to me. Truly speak. That Dad had left the house and no one knew where he went. I sat with that call for a long time. Thought about everything. About the decades of silence, of being used, of covering for both of them while they twisted the truth. And I knew what they all expected me to do. Forgive. Because the story was shifting. Dad was the villain now. Mom was the victim. Kayla was the peacekeeper. Lee was the protector. And me. I was the one still holding the grudge. But here's the thing. It wasn't a grudge. It was a decision. A final one. I told Lee I appreciated her. That I was grateful Kayla had stood by me. But I wouldn't be coming home. Not now. Not ever. And the fallout hit fast. Kayla was stunned. She didn't yell, but I could feel it in her voice, disappointment. He said Mom was really trying. That I couldn't blame her for everything. I said I wasn't. But she watched him do it. And she stayed quiet. For years. And that makes her just as responsible. It was quiet for a moment. Then Kayla said, "I guess I didn't expect you to be so cold." I said, "I didn't expect any of you to care so much now." That was the last time we spoke. Because in the end I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. The silence after my last call with Kayla didn't feel like peace. It felt like an empty stage after the actors have left. Cold, echoing, pointless. I'd spent so long imagining that cutting them off would feel freeing. And it did at first. But then came the second wave. The part they don't tell you about. The judgment. It started subtle. A few cousins stopped replying to my messages. A coworker who follows me on Instagram made a weird comment about being strong even when your family lets you down. Like I'd posted about some petty fight, not a full-blown disintegration. Then the group text came. Kayla sent it. Long, carefully worded. She said Mom had been going to counseling, that she'd started journaling, that she talked about me every week and it was the only time she really cried. She said Dad was living somewhere else now and that he'd done a lot of damage that everyone had ignored for too long. Then came the line that stuck. She's not perfect, but she's not the enemy either. You're the only piece still missing. As if I was a puzzle. As if I was supposed to fit myself back into the space that had chewed me up for decades. I didn't respond. A few days later, Aunt Lee called. He sounded different, not angry but disappointed. She said she still understood why I walked away but that people can change. That maybe it wasn't about them anymore, maybe it was about me needing to let go of the past. That's when I realized they were shifting the blame again. Not directly. Not harshly. Just enough to make it seem like my refusal to come back was the new problem. As if I was now the one breaking the family apart. But here's the truth. The family was already broken. I just stopped taping it together with my own skin. A week later I got an email from my mom. Subject line, talk? One sentence inside, I know I failed you but I never stopped loving you. And that was the moment it finally became clear. She still didn't get it. Because it was never about whether she loved me. It was about how little that love ever protected me. How often it was used as a tool to keep me obedient, to keep me quiet. How it never stood between me and the things that hurt. It was just another excuse to demand more from me. I deleted the email. Not out of cruelty. Just necessity. Because I knew what would come next. The flood of emotional strings, the guilt, the pressure to be the bigger person. The same story on repeat. But not this time. They say when you go no contact it's an explosion. But in reality it's more like a slow decay, of invitations, of check-ins, of names dropped less and less until you become a story no one knows how to tell. I became that story. The ungrateful daughter. The cold one. The selfish one. Even Kayla, who once believed me, started drifting. She stopped sending updates. I heard she got a job offer out west. I congratulated her. She didn't write back. Now I'm the problem. The one who won't forgive. The one who won't move on. The one who had everything. A stable job, a comfortable life, and still chose bitterness. But the truth is simpler than they want it to be. I just stopped accepting pain as the price of love. That's it. They're angry now. All of them. And I understand why. They thought I'd always be there, quietly holding up the roof while the fire spread underneath. But I walked away. And they can't stand that the house is collapsing without me. I won't go back. Not for a birthday. Not for a holiday. Not for a funeral. Because family isn't just blood. It's how people show up when it matters. And when I was sitting outside their house, alone with a trunk full of gifts and a text that called me a failure, they showed me exactly who they were. Now they're living in the wreckage of their choices. And I'm not here to rebuild it. I'm finally building something of my own. Without them.